Welcome to A Layman Looks at the Word with Hal Richardson. This time we're continuing with our study of the Gospel of the Old Ones. This is Lesson 5. Last time we saw that Noah's son Shem had been the high order of the priest of Melchizedek, the king and the prophet, and that after Abraham had come back from the slaughter of the kings, he blessed Abraham and gave him that order because he saw that Abram at that time was going to defeat the evil from Shinar. Even though Nimrod escaped, he killed several of those kings that attacked Sodom and Gomorrah and took his nephew Lot, which Abram recovered. So Abram became the seventh Melchizedek priest, whom God changed his name to Abraham a little later. In Genesis 15, God makes a covenant with Abram and told him that he'd have a son that would be from his own loins. And he gives Abram and his descendants all the land from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. The Lord tells Abram that his descendants will be as the stars of heaven in multitude. Abram believed God, and God counted that to him as righteousness. Believing in God and his coming Messiah was the trait of all of the old ones that followed the Melchizedek priesthood order. Their belief, as was Abraham's, was counted to them as righteousness. When Abraham questioned God about a child because he and his wife Sarai were so old in age, God told him to prepare the sacrifice for a covenant. In Genesis 15:9, and he said unto him, Take me a heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all of these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece against one another. But the birds he divided not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. God then prophesies to Abram that his descendants will be in Egypt for 400 years and be afflicted there, but will be delivered and come back to the land of Canaan, because the iniquity of the Amorites was not yet full. And he showed him the future of things that would happen to him and things that would happen to his descendants, all the way down to the Messiah. And in Genesis 15:17, it came to pass, when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp passed between those pieces. In this covenant, all Abram had to do was believe God, trust him, and follow him. The 3 large animals, each 3 years old, was a trinity within a trinity. The horror of great darkness, Abram saw all the future that would happen to the Messiah, who would be his descendant. This would be the death of Jesus for the sins of all who believe in him. The smoking furnace was God passing through the pieces of the covenant. The burning lamp was the Messiah, the eternal Son, passing through the pieces instead of Abram. The turtle dove and the pigeon were what Mary and Joseph would take for the atonement of Jesus at the temple 2,000 years in the future. Remember that Jesus told the Pharisees in John 8:56 that your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day. He saw it and was glad. Abraham was called by God to leave his father Terah when he was 75 years old, and he went out of Haran in the land of Canaan, even though Abram did not even know where he was going. Sarai told Abram that she should take her maid Hagar and have a child with her, because she was past her time. He did, and Ishmael was born when Abram was 86. Ishmael became the father of most of the Arab world. When Abram was 99 and Sarah was 89, God changed their names. He took the Hay from his name and changed Sarai to Sarah, which means princess, and Abram to Abraham by adding the Hay to his name, which makes him the father of nations. The Lord's name is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the Tetragrammaton. In the English Bible, they add vowels and make it Jehovah. Hay is grace and is the breath of God, and God told them both that Sarah would have a child by Abraham. They both laughed about it. 1 year later, Isaac was born, a miracle son, when Sarah was 90 and Abraham was 100. Isaac was the son of promise, and his name means laughter. This is the son of promise, born to continue the messianic line. The Bible has more detail than the Dead Sea Scrolls on this key event. The book of Jasher tells us that Abram was with Shem and Noah from 10 years old till 49. According to God's plan, he learned the way of the Lord. After Abram had defeated the evil kings of Shinar, Shem followed God's will in bestowing on Abram the Melchizedek priesthood. Now Abram, or Abraham, has an heir. When Isaac was grown, the Lord came to Abram in Genesis 22:2. And he said, Take now thy son, thy only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee to the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up, and went unto the place which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said to his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again unto you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand, and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. He said, Here am I. He said, Lay not thy hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time, and said, By myself have I sworn, said the Lord, because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. In Genesis 23, the chapter following the sacrifice of Isaac, we see that Sarah dies at the age of 127. That would make Isaac 37 years old at that time. So he was a grown man when the sacrifice took place. In Jasher 23 is the story of Isaac's sacrifice. It does not disagree with the Bible, but it does add several elements that aren't mentioned in the Bible. It mentions that Satan tried to stop Abraham and Isaac in their journey to the mountain that God would show them, and they both saw the glory of God above the mount and a pillar of fire marking the mount. The two men with them did not see that, whom Jasher names as Ishmael and Eleazar, who waited with the donkey while Abraham and Isaac went to the mount. It describes how Satan went to Sarah in disguise and told her that Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, and she was very distressed. But when it did not happen, Satan returned as an old man and told her that Isaac lived, and she was so full of joy that she died. In Jasher 23:75, and all that Abraham did on this occasion by the altar, he would exclaim and say, This is in the room of my son, and it may at this day be considered before the Lord in place of my son. And Abraham finished the whole of the service by the altar, and the service was accepted before the Lord and accounted as if it had been Isaac. And the Lord blessed Abraham and his seed on that day. Because of the covenant between Abraham and God, and Abraham's willingness to offer his only son to God, that gave God the legal right to sacrifice his only son for mankind's redemption. The ram in the thorn thicket is a picture of Jesus with the crown of thorns. The Jewish tradition is that the ram's horns were the first shofars. In Jasher 24:17, and when the days of their mourning passed by, Abraham sent away his son Isaac, and he went to the house of Shem and Eber to learn the ways of the Lord and his instructions. And Abraham remained there 3 years. That is Hebron, where he had bought a burial cave for his dead. Looking at this time chart, you can see that Abraham and Noah were contemporaries for a time, and that Shem and Isaac were also contemporaries. It's hard for us to think about that, but Nimrod is one as well. Well, that's going to end our program this time. We can see that all these things that we study all lead to our Lord Jesus Christ. He is the Messiah. He is the eternal Melchizedek priest and king and prophet. If you don't know him today, ask him into your life. He is the only way to the Father. This is Hal Richardson. Join me next time. We'll continue with the Gospel of the Old Ones. Bye for now.